There you go.
I think it depends on the language settings. You get it in that language.
Oh, that's kind of neat, actually. Yeah, I have some language questions, but they don't pertain to Coptic, so I'll just leave them until later. Okay, so we're gonna get started. There's I think there's 59 questions here. So we're gonna have to move kind of fast. I think 59 is also prime. Is it? Where's my engineers? Aurelio, you're an engineer, right? You're not? I thought you were.
Physicist.
Physicist. Oh, okay. Thank you for the correction, but is 59 a prime number?
It is.
Okay, thank you. So this is not going to divide up however I do it, so I'm just going to go in fours again. And we'll start with Christian.
Sure. And these are all pretty short too, so shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, do you want more? I can give you, it's a prime number, so I can divide it.
No, I mean, like, we shouldn't have a hard time getting through all of them, I think, but
yeah.
Anyway, so number one, har if mot, a dead dog.
A dead dog. Oh, why is that the first one that the exercise starts with? That's so grim. Yeah, but it says a dead dog. So we'll go through your four and then discuss like what we're supposed to be looking at here. I feel like it's pretty straightforward, but yeah. So number two.
Number two, synagoge is kid hatem tagora. A synagogue that is built close to the agora, the marketplace.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, agora is definitely one that you can just use. You can use that word in English too.
That's a great word. Agoraphobia.
Yeah.
Urome if wehibjaye. A man who essentially lives in the desert, who is settled.
Yeah. Oh, is settled is good actually. That does a really great job of capturing in English what the Coptic means, because it is like a man living in the desert, you could say, but it's also the stative. So there's is settled is probably as good as you're going to get with like identifying what's going on in the Coptic in the English translation somehow.
Sweet. And then number four, uhimhal e nesotum an Joyce. A servant or slave who does not listen to his master.
Yeah, you can also translate sotum and sa as obey.
Yeah.
It's like a compound that, kind of carries that meaning. And then like looking at all these examples, what do you think we're supposed to be learning here?
So my guess would be that the use of the circumstantial as kind of like a relative, like a qualifier.
Yeah, so it's sometimes called the pseudo-relative, which it's a bit, problematic, I guess, to say pseudo-relative. Like Egyptologists have a lot of terms for things in grammar that use the word pseudo, and it's kind of funny because it means you're just naming the thing by what it isn't. But it's useful because it kind of tells you that this is like a relative. It's most like a non-defining relative clause. So, number one, if you wanted to be very literal about it, you could say like a dog which is dead. That's not quite right either, but that's kind of close to what we have here. And they can be used exactly like adjectives. And I think that's what Lambden wants you to see, is that Coptic will very often use a circumstantial where English would use an adjective, like a dead dog. Yeah. Okay. Next I have, oh, sure.
Lambden doesn't say this explicitly, but I take it that the circumstantial can be used both with the infinitive and the qualitative.
It can, yeah.
Because he made sure to say when he introduced the qualitative that it could replace the infinitive only in the present and the future, at least of the forms we'd learned by then. So I was a bit confused that he didn't mention in this lesson, but then goes on to use it in the examples. But I guess that's just how it is.
Yeah, so this actually does fall under that rule. So in general in Coptic, the major distinction is between bipartite and tripartite verbal constructions. And then it's a big topic because we could look to earlier stages of the language and how these things formed. But the short version is that they all formed out of adverbial sentences. So this construction is analogous to what would be called the pseudo-verbal. Again, one of those like naming something by what it isn't, but it's a earlier Egyptian construction where you say like he is upon going or something like that. So it is technically an adverbial sentence because it's a prepositional phrase with the infinitive of the verb being used as the object of the preposition, but it expresses a verbal concept. And then that first shows up in Old Egyptian actually. So it's a very, very old construction. But it gains traction over time, and you'll see it a fair bit in Middle Egyptian, and then by Late Egyptian, it's the main way of expressing like some basic verbal idea, like I am going, some simple verbal sentence like that. And then so it doesn't really change much in terms of how you read the sentence, but it does change what you are allowed and not allowed to do grammatically, and it's kind of just. I'm not sure why exactly, but the stative and the pseudo-verbal are very similar. The stative actually isn't the same as the pseudo-verbal, but over time they sort of merged into one form. So by the time you get to Coptic, you have this thing where you can just swap out the verb. Like I could say uhur efmu, and that would mean a dying dog, or uhur efmoet, which is a dead dog. So you can just swap the stative out of that because it's the same grammatical construction. And that applies to the bipartite, I believe. I would have to look more closely to be sure that that's right, but pretty sure that ability to like swap the stative and infinitive applies to the bipartite. And it doesn't apply in the tripartite because all of the tripartite constructions are actually phrases that have been kind of reduced over time into verbal prefixes. So for instance, if I said like uhor afmu, like a dog, he died. In that case, the afmu part is actually made of irafmu, he did dying. And then in that case, you can't swap it for the stative because then it would be something like he did dead. And that's not allowed grammatically, and it kind of doesn't really make any sense. So for all of these complex historical reasons, you can put a stative in some places and you can't in other places. I would say that for now, unless you're planning to like translate a book into Coptic, that's the kind of thing that I think gets much easier when you've seen quite a lot of Coptic, and it's just really hard to pinpoint at first. Like once you've read a lot of Coptic, differentiating between the bipartite and tripartite is it's just super obvious because they work differently. But yeah.
Sure, thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Great, yeah, it does.
Cool. Okay, next up I have Aurelio.
Sure thing. So, number 5, Usher Shem FDUV Pefson, a child who fights with his brother. Or fighting with his brother.
Exactly, I was gonna say that. Yeah, you can translate this who fights or fighting. Either way is fine.
Uchlo Essex, an old woman who's paralyzed, or a paralyzed old woman.
Yeah.
That comes from Soch. Oh no, that's a qualitative of Soch.
Yeah.
Let's
in that case, it's a lot of times when you see the qualitative, it's more likely to be just sort of adjectival, like an old woman who is paralyzed, or you could say a paralyzed old woman, although that's not, I think that's considered slightly ableist language, but that's tricky. So yeah, however you want to.
Wow. Okay, I didn't even think of that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a rule about. So I recently was reading a lot about accessibility for a project that we were working on, and one of the things I found was to people who write about accessibility, or at least someone said this, like if you need to identify someone's disability, you should use a relative phrase instead of an adjective, because it implies that you're like defining a person in terms of their disability or just adding like incidental information. So, you know, I care about not being ableist, so I'm happy to jump on board with that. But I think that might be a bit, like a little bit pedantic. I don't know. I don't have someone who is blind near me to ask, but I don't think that they would be offended if you referred to them as a blind person rather than a person who is blind. But, you know, anyway. So
All right.
that's kind of unrelated, but it is relevant to how this is translated, and Coptic actually, by chance, I think, uses the like politer way of saying it. So there you go.
All right. Number 7. Uhet efnashit. A heart that is hardened.
Yeah, good.
And
Hard,
last one,
hard.
all using the same construction, basically. U irene enisme nevol an. A peace that is not lasting.
Yeah, a non-lasting peace.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah. Okay. Great job, Aurelio. Rasmus, do you want to take the next 4?
Sure. So it goes Ushime is said, and that's a woman who is pregnant or a pregnant woman.
Yep.
And then Henheke Euchait, which are the poor people who are, or some poor people who are hungry, or hungry poor people.
Yep. And you can actually see that there's a historical relationship between those 2 words.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah,
I hadn't noticed that, but that's yeah. And Uhye Enesmoten an, a road which isn't easy.
Yeah, good.
And 12 is Upneuma if Waab, a spirit which is holy, or a holy spirit.
Yeah, exactly. And this is an extraordinarily common phrase in a lot of Coptic literature, because it normally has kind of a religious component to it. So yeah, you say pepnevma et wa'av or upnevma f wa'av, and that's really consistent. And that, you know, this is kind of, I think this is where the idea about the pseudo relative or the circumstantial construction being associated with indefinite antecedents. So upnevma instead of pepnevma gets f wa'av instead of et wa'av. So I think this particular example is where Coptologists derived that rule from. And it is very consistent in this phrase. So if it's upnevma, it will be f wa'av, a Holy Spirit. Yeah, and then et wa'av, which is holy, if it's definite. So yeah, that's a useful one to look at. Okay, thanks, Rasmus. I'm going to move through these pretty quickly, but please don't hesitate to pipe in if you have questions. Dante, do you want to do the next 4?
Yeah. Peso et ke en taposeke. So the grain that is in the storehouse.
Yeah, the grain which lies in the storehouse. So K is actually the past tense. Not the past tense. What am I trying to say? Qualitative. K is the qualitative of ko, like to leave or to put or abandon. So it's the grain which is deposited in the apotheke, which I think means like storehouse or whatever. Somehow it changed to mean pharmacy.
Right.
I'm really curious about how that.
Yeah, right.
How did that happen? Like, what's the etymology? How did it go from like silo to pharmacy? That's quite a leap. It's really it's outdone itself, this word.
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's not bad. Yeah, I'll go with it. I mean, yeah, okay. Anyway, 14.
Ume eshe efush. A crowd that is numerous.
Yeah. A multitudinous crowd.
Yes. Umatoi F. Aleu Etchen Uheto. A soldier who is riding on a horse.
Yeah, good. Okay.
En Shacheme. So some words of truth or some true words or sayings. Or
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I like both of those translations. You know, there are lots of times when like dealing with a Coptic text where one clearly works better than the other, but it's worthwhile to remember that they really are grammatically indistinguishable. Like Coptic does not have a word that means true. It has a word that means truth, and you say some words of truth, and that means some true words. That's pretty important. This example doesn't really show it, but I think we're going to see a bunch of examples, and we'll probably find some examples where that actually matters. The adjectival versus nominal quality of that second word sometimes matters quite a bit, and you kind of have to remember that forever because it comes up all the time. Anyway, okay. Thanks, Dante. Claudio, do you want to do the next four?
Sure. Number 2, Uro en Benipe. And that is a door of iron.
Yeah. This word, Benipe, is a really cool word. Have we talked about this word before, Benipe? You can actually break it apart into Benipe, metal of sky, or metal from sky.
Meteorites.
So it's,
The metal belongs to sky, maybe.
yeah. So yeah, it's because before iron smelting, all iron, iron in Egypt was meteoric iron. And they knew that, and there are Egyptian texts that actually talk about meteors in a way that shows that they clearly understood what they were. And I think the reason for this is that, especially like in the Western desert, meteors are pretty frequent, and there's no ground cover or anything to hide them. So you could theoretically see a meteor fall and then go to the place where it landed and find the iron that it left behind. And I actually found a little like a little meteor near Siwa when I visited there. It's pretty neat. You can find like little chunks of iron, just pure iron, like, yeah, whatever, just kind of sitting out by itself. It's really neat. So yeah, they knew full well that iron came from the sky. And when this word was coined, that was the only source. So this word, I think our earliest attestation is in the New Kingdom when iron smelting still wasn't invented yet. That's kind of neat. Anyway.
Number 3, Ustauros en She. A wooden cross.
Yes, good.
Number 4, Way en One. A house of stone, or I don't know the other way. Stone house.
A stone house, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Either way is perfectly fine. House of stone or a stone house.
And number 5, en Snauch en Benipe. Is some fetter, some iron fetter.
Yes, good. Some fetters of iron or some iron fetters. Actually, these examples like stone, wood, iron are probably our best case for seeing the like both meanings of this construction, because they work in both ways. Like before you said a house of stone or a stone house. Both of those are perfectly normal sentences in English. Neither one is at all ungrammatical. You could refer to a house as a house of stone or a stone house with really no difference in meaning. And that does a great job of illustrating kind of what's going on in Coptic too. Did you have another question, Claudio?
In number 5, I don't need to use, do I need to use some?
You don't need to. You can just say some fetters.
Just feathers is
yeah, possible. That's fine. You can just say fetters of iron.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Claudio. David.
Okay, number 6, in Shaja Metanoia, words of regret.
Yeah. Yeah, good. The words of regret is fine.
Pama and Chopin. My place of being, of existence, of becoming. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good one to show kind of what's difficult about the word Chopin, because it really has no English translation, and it's a problem for Egyptology to try to translate this word because it's in people's names all the time. And then I think the one I saw the other day, there was like a Reddit question about various different kings' names, and I think Tutankhamun's praenomen is Neb Khepru Re, which is like Lord of the Chopes of Re. And like, what are the Chopes? They are the existences that we often say manifestations. So then, you take that exact same word and put it in a sentence like this: my place of Chope. It's like, what exactly does that mean? Exist is a pretty good word. Become is a pretty good word. But none of them are really exactly, because it's also much vaguer than that. Like exist has a much more precise meaning. It's like, it implies some kind of contrast with like non-existence. And becoming implies some like prior state versus a new state. And Chopa really, it means the kind of the union of all of those sets of meaning, if that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, Pama and Chope, my dwelling place is fine. Means basically house or living room, I suppose.
Okay, number 8, Ushmot and Angelos. A form or a shape of an angel, something like this.
Yeah, a form of an angel, or you could say an angelic form.
Okay.
This is definitely one where that decision about whether to treat it as a noun or treat it as an adjective actually kind of does make a difference in English. And when you find those in real Coptic texts, you have to like use your best judgment to decide which meaning is actually correct.
And pistis so that would be maybe the true judgment, or I mean, it means trust, right? Or
faith.
Faith. Okay, so true faith in a way, but truth. Yeah.
Yeah, it can mean a bunch of different things, but you have this phenomenon with borrowing, where words that are borrowed, especially in a religious context, tend to take on more specific meanings than they have in the original language. And we see that all the time. I think we were just talking about examples from German. There are quite a few English words in German that mean something very precise and not so precise. I can think of the example that comes to mind is Spanish hacer footing, which is the funniest phrase I ever heard, because footing in English is very vague. It doesn't really mean anything, but in Spanish that means specifically like to go hiking, which is not, that's like, of all the things that footing can mean, that's one that it definitely doesn't mean in English. So you're getting that same kind of phenomenon here. When people borrow a word from another language, they often use it in a super precise way. And pistis in Coptic almost always refers to belief or faith, and specifically the belief in Jesus as the Son of God. And that very specific article of faith.
Okay.
So yeah.
It's not like Christianity, the true faith or something, or it refers to religion of a kind?
I think it almost certainly refers to Christianity as the true faith, in contrast to other religions, which are presumably, not correct. Yes, Pistis Sophia. So someone asked about Pistis Sophia. Oh, Peter, I didn't have you on my list. Yeah, there's a Gnostic text. And that's what,
okay.
how does Pistis Sophia translate?
I can just lurk. You guys are too far along.
Fine. You're welcome to lurk. This is this is a safe space. All kinds of looming about or lurking or auditing, whatever you want to call it. But those are all welcome here. What does Pista Sophia mean? It's like, wait, that name suddenly doesn't make any sense to me.
Wouldn't it be like a belief in wisdom or something like that? Or
yeah, it's like wisdom faith. Pista Sophia.
Yeah.
I never thought about it before. It makes sense automatically to me as Pista Sophia, but I never tried to translate it into English, I guess, and then it doesn't really work for me. But oh well.
Yeah.
That's how it goes sometimes. Cool. Okay. David, you just read 4, correct?
Yes.
No, you ended at 9. Okay, cool. Joe, do you want to take the next 4?
Sure thing. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Joe.
If I cut out, my internet's been unstable this morning, so I hope that you guys will be able to hear me. Number 10.
Yeah, we can hear you fine. If you cut out, no problem.
Okay, thanks. Usefet and Kohet. That would be a burning sword.
Yeah, pretty metal, actually. We need more sentences like this.
Yeah, that would be fun. Number 11, Umisterian Nute. A mystery of God or a divine mystery.
Yeah, this is one of the places where that choice actually matters a lot in translating. So yeah, it's a good one. A mystery of God or a divine mystery. Yeah, you want to pick the right one for your context.
Definitely. Number 12, Penma Nwom, an eating place, or not, our eating place. And number 13, Henmatoi Njaja, enemy soldiers.
Enemy soldiers. Yeah, good. This one threw me off pretty badly. This is okay. Yeah, that's correct. Our eating place. I thought it was like an eating spirit or something, because Pneuma is often written that way. Anyway, all right. Yeah, good job, Joe. Thank you for that. Okay. And Pat, would you like to do these 4?
Yeah, sure. So number 14, uapot and erote, a cup of milk.
Yeah, good.
Number 15, uma and hadech, a watching place.
Yeah, I assume this refers to like a watchtower.
Yeah,
or something.
probably. So number 1, en hmos gentagora, and now hegemon efhon ehun. While we were sitting at the marketplace, we saw the ruler approaching.
Yeah, good. I love these sentences. I'm much happier with full sentences. These kind of flow. Okay.
And then number 2, tinacho and peima e choshet ebol hetefem beho and Joyce. I will remain in this place, waiting for the day of the master.
Yeah, that's good. Do you want to do this part a little more literally, according to the Coptic?
So while I'm waiting?
Yeah, waiting is a good translation of this. There's nothing wrong with it. But literally what this says is like watching out before him.
Oh, okay. So maybe expecting?
Yeah, waiting is also fine. I wasn't correcting your translation by any means. That's a perfectly fine translation. I just wanted to draw that out just to make sure that for you and everyone else who's listening, just to make sure it's clear what all the individual words mean. So it's circumstantial, first person, singular, choshet devo, like watching out. And then hetef is literally it says his belly, which is kind of funny if you translate it too literally, but it's like watching out in front of him. And then in front of who? The day of the Lord. So yeah, that's how that all fits together. Is that clear to everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. All right. Thank you, Pat. And Mustafa, I got 4 for you here.
Yeah. Of course. Ernest now Moshe et nete auge evrome efmot efke hijim pekah The brothers now the brothers walking to the monastery. They found a man who is dying.
Dead.
Dying dead.
Dead, not dying.
Lying on the ground.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
So as the brothers were walking to the monastery, they fell toward a man as he laid upon the ground. Yeah, so your translation was actually better than that. Mine was really clunky. But the main thing I want to check out, you said a dying man, but that's actually different. So a dying man would be efmu. They found a man dying, but this is moet. So they found a man dead.
Okay.
So yeah, there's no hope for him left, unfortunately.
Amon ebol eweine empe sovo et tapoteke they mon means what does it mean actually? I know that, but
like
I couldn't.
many in earlier Egyptian.
Mon. I couldn't remember actually.
It's like to remain.
Yeah, I get it. It's come from man.
Yeah.
They remain. They remain. They remained to. They remain to. No. Grain.
Ina is bring.
The grain in. Yeah. Let me try this again. They they remained to bringing the grain to the barn or to the storehouse.
Yeah. And then you might want to translate this, they continued bringing grain to the storehouse, or they persisted in bringing grain to the storehouse, or something like this. So it's like, this is the main verb, they remained, but then there's this circumstantial here that tells us like what they're remaining in, and they're remaining in bringing grain to the storehouse. So you could just, in English, you could say they continued bringing grain to the storehouse, or they kept on bringing grain to the storehouse, or something like that, just to make it a little more idiomatic in English. But yeah, that's totally fine.
And aloten enti ovosh an esotem echenchaje enteimine. You stop. I don't want to listen. Some sort of words.
Yeah. Literally, I don't want to listen to words of this sort. But yeah, good translation. Okay, and I think one more, right?
Yeah. And all now erof fbek ebol gentenite. I think the last word has more e.
Yeah.
We saw him who is coming in the monastery.
It's going out of the monastery.
Yeah, going. We saw him who is going out to the monastery.
Yeah, it's a little weird because you have hen in Coptic, which most of the time you can translate in, but it can also be from, because of this thing where like Egyptian talks about the place where the event started from, rather than from the place where it ended. So like in English, we would say we saw him coming out of the monastery, or we saw him coming from the monastery.
Like, as I understand, it works like the Middle Egyptian M preposition.
Yeah, it works just like that. And this is a general thing in Egyptian where there are other analogous cases like this. I'd have trouble thinking of an example, but it's very often the case in Egyptian with verbs that imply some sort of motion. Everything is referenced in terms of where things are coming from, rather than where they're going to. So like the preposition from in English implies that like we're here now and we came from a place over there. Whereas Egyptian just gives you the place where it started, which is kind of different, right? It's whether you're talking about where things were after the verb versus where things were before the verb. Egyptian talks about where they were before, English talks about where they are after, by default. So because of that default state of the way Egyptian describes physical relationships, you can say they saw him coming out in the monastery, and it's automatically understood that he started off in the monastery and then he came out. Does that make sense? It takes some getting used to, but I can promise you after reading a lot of Coptic, it just becomes second nature to just think of like where things started rather.
I got used to understand because of the Middle Egyptian M. Actually, it's just work something like similar like this.
Yeah. A lot of times when teaching Middle Egyptian, even in Alan's textbook, you'll find this. You get a bunch of meanings for prepositions, like M means with, in, from, etc., etc. So you get this kind of long list of as. Yeah, it means like a dozen things, but that's not really true. It really only means one thing. It means M, and then the English translations are just the different words you have to use in translation to capture the idea of the Egyptian. So that's not wrong by any means, but I think it's helpful for kind of gaining a sort of mental fluency with the language to not think in terms of like, how do you translate this preposition, but think in terms of like the abstraction, like what is the relationship that's being described here? And then just think of it like this sound, hen, or whatever it is, represents that relationship in an abstract sense. That helps me anyway. Versus like going through this mental list of all possible English translations of a word, that's really tedious, and it tends to cause more confusion than it alleviates. Okay, so that's the end of the list. So Christian, we're back to you. Do you want to do 4 more?
Sure. So number 7, Mintan Swo Hinten Apoteke ala Wintan Mawan Hahenshi. So we don't have grain, I think, in our apotheke, our storage, which I think Aurelio found the etymology for apotheke.
Oh, did he?
Well, it's quite funny actually. So it is a storehouse in Latin, taking after the Greek, and then it becomes things like, for example, a boutique in French, and a bodega in Spanish. And well, so
I was about to say, it's like bodega, like in New York, bodega means one of those little, like shotgun style stores that has a bunch of random junk.
Right. So back to your point, how things become awfully specific. In German, then an apotheke would be a place where you can buy medicine, while a boutique, of course, will be something where you can buy fashionable clothes. It's the same word, just adopted for very specific uses. Kind of fascinating.
Very telling.
That's amazing.
The cultures. Just kidding.
Right. If it's
longevity.
Greek, if it's Latin, it's medicine. If it's French, it's fashion. And I guess a bodega would have wine too.
I could imagine that even taking place within Latin because of the like it would have been known that this was a Greek word because it's markedly Greek. And then there's that like the Roman association between Greek language and physicians. For some reason, like all the physicians in Rome, like there was a stereotype of all physicians being Greek. I wonder if there is some kind of deeper connection there. I feel like apotheca also, like you can go there and like talk to the pharmacist and they can like prescribe you a medication, which is very different from the way pharmacies work in the US. I think everywhere besides the US, pharmacies are like the person who works there is like a fairly competent physician, and they are in the US too. Like the people who work behind the counter in CVS are very competent pharmacists, but the cultural norms are different, so they don't ever like prescribe you medication. Anyway, that's interesting. This word has a pretty incredible history, actually. I didn't even realize it was boutique. I didn't make that connection. Yeah, cool stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
did you?
I didn't finish the whole sentence. So
I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm the one who started that.
Then I'm not sorry.
Yeah, you shouldn't be. It's okay. Now, so we don't have grain in our storage, but we have lots of wood there. Or we have lots of wood.
It's not very tasty though. Here we have an implication of trade, which doesn't exist in ancient Egypt, according to Egyptology. Still, it frustrates me so much. I know I'm like such a broken record about that, but it's so annoying to me that we pretend that trade doesn't exist. It's so frustrating. Anyway, okay.
Number 8, Sotem in shaje in tatapro evolje hemene. Listen to the words of my head.
Or mouth.
My mouth. Tapro,
Yeah.
okay. Because they're true. They're true.
Listen to the words of my mouth. That's such a weird way of saying that.
You understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Same. Rush hour.
Classic.
So good. Number 10. Au Sharof Nchinet Wehen.
Hang on. You skipped 9.
Oh. Okay, yeah. I now in Uhor Ifi Nukui in Trompe in Tiftapro. I saw a dog carrying a small dove in its mouth.
Good.
And then
I despise doves, so I'm glad that the dog is fed.
The rest of the sky. Au Isharof Unchinet Wehen Perikuros Piordanes Deru. They came to him, namely those settled, I guess, in the vicinity or around, or all of those settled around Jordanes. Jordan?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I don't really see anything to comment on there. I mean, you got Jordan, and then Perikoros is the countryside. So yeah, that's a good translation. Okay, wait, was that the last one?
I think that was 4.
Okay, well,
yeah.
We'll just continue along then. Let's see if I can grab 4. Okay, thanks, Christian. Aurelio, do you want to do 4 of these?
Sure. Number 11. Naine and Ran and Sneo Edeb. No, sorry. No, Edeb Ekeme. So these are the names of the brothers who belong to Egypt, or who are counted as belonging to Egypt.
Exactly. Yeah.
Number 12. Neisobenan? No, wait. I mean, I know what it means, but I'm just thinking, how do you pronounce it? Is it Nisobenan? Peje Nejome Nukne? I don't know that.
It is nay.
Oh, it's nay. Oh,
it is nay.
Past tense then. The past converter?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. That doesn't take an N in front, huh? I'm a little bit confused what form that first word is. Meaning for me is, I didn't know that these are your books, but is that?
So
Yeah.
it's the imperfect converter, the nere, in front of the kind of the standard first present form. So it's just the e suffix pronoun without the t in front. So it would be like nere tisoen an. So I was knowing.
Got it. So
I was not knowing. Sorry, I forgot the on.
Oh.
Yeah, I was knowing that these books are yours.
So the only way I know that's negative is because of the on. It's not marked on at the front. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's right. But you can tell that it's not. I don't know because that would be endisoen on. There would be the T in there. So the absence of the T here tells you that this is not the negative N, it's the imperfect N. That's super hard to spot. I like based on what we've all learned so far in this class, that really could have gone either way. But and it's hard to tell the difference. But yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Actually, I was thinking more in the direction of the circumstantial, but wouldn't that be negative?
Well, and it is. That would just be a so and on.
And if you want to make
I
it
was
negative?
not knowing, or yeah. Wait. Would you say Eddie so and on?
Like if
I
I
think
wanted
it'd
to
just be a so and on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. That would be the circumstantial. And then like really the circumstantial is kind of just one of the most basic forms of the verb. It doesn't have the T at the front that tells you that it's the first present. It's usually just the plus suffix pronoun. And that's what it evolved from. It evolved from eu plus suffix pronoun followed by infinitive. So like iwi, hair, sewen, I upon knowing. Yeah, it's complicated.
All right. Number 13.
Okay.
En gen hun et polis anau eumeeshe osh pe devol hiten te pule. As we were approaching the city, anau eumeeshe osh, we saw a great multitude or a numerous multitude running forth from the gate.
Yeah, running running through the gate.
Oh, through the gate, right?
So yeah, potevol could obviously mean to run out, but then I feel like this is something that definitely confused me at first, and I kind of got used to it over time after seeing a lot of examples. But evol hiten, the hiten tends to snag that evol and not let it mean anything else. So if you see like evol hen or evol hiten or whatever, it's going to mean through, and then that evol is not available to be combined with the verb. There are even some cases you'll see in Coptic where it's evol hin. You'll have the evol twice because it can't be reused. So yeah, we're finding lots of cool little like details in here that I wasn't expecting.
Well, real sentences.
Yeah.
If Moshe hachtem perpe afnau eubile en heke fdievol empefrop in chich. As he was walking along the temple, he saw a blind person, a poor blind person, who was selling his handicraft.
Yeah, good. That's it.
I think that was 4.
Was that 4? Okay. Well, we'll have to get 4 more. Let's see. Rasmus, do you want to do 4 more of these?
Yes. So number 15 is men kjom mon en nutje ebol en hendaimon en akat harton. So it is impossible for us to cast out unclean evil spirits or demons.
Yeah, demon is an interesting word. So like in English, obviously that means like a very specific thing, like an evil spirit, like Satan's minions, I guess, or whatever, a devil. In in Greek, it doesn't. It actually means something like a genius, like a guiding spirit, or a ka, or whatever. And Coptic kind of has that too. Daimon needs to include the word akartaton. Wow, that's terrible pronunciation, but you got it. Needs to include the word unclean. Otherwise, it doesn't take on that meaning of demon.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So 16 is afwo efshai awo afkjost ehun pro en tefri. He stopped writing and looked toward the door of his cell.
Yeah. He looked into the door. Yeah, it's gotta be in. He looked into the door of his cell. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, good.
17. Hapeseron etrenlo evol hempeima. It is necessary for us to depart from here. That is to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, good. This word lo is really tough, because here it means leave. Earlier we saw it meaning stop. It's both. I don't know.
Yeah, also here. So 18 is askio estrime etiempemu pesmerit and high, which I guess means she kept weeping for the death of her beloved husband, but I was confused by kyo because it can also mean to stop. So is it she stopped or she kept weeping?
It's, yeah, this one's tough. So cho actually means to remain. So in certain contexts, like I cho hempema, like I stayed in this place, then it means to stop and remain there. But then in this context, it means to continue, because she's staying crying.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's rough. It doesn't, but I appreciate you saying that. I tried my best. These, like, it's just one of those things with foreign languages. Like, the words are not going to have an exact one-to-one correspondence with one another.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we, like, all languages use metaphors constantly. There's a great book, actually, Metaphors We Live By. It's like a classic.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, awesome book.
Johnson.
Is that the authors?
Yeah. Lakoff at least.
Definitely.
A lot of part.
So they talk a lot about how metaphors are just constantly embedded in speech, and often those metaphors work differently in different languages. So in this case, the metaphor is sitting in a place and remaining there, and in the Egyptian metaphor is that it's like to continue doing something because you stay in the place of doing that thing. Where English uses a totally different metaphor. We use the metaphor of like traveling along the path of the activity. So it's super confusing because they're just like exactly contradictory, but they actually mean the exact same thing. Yeah. So it's just a different choice of metaphor. Move this out of the way. Oh, was that all your 4, Rasmus? I hope I didn't.
I think so. Yeah.
Cheat you out of a sentence. Okay,
I'm fortunate not to get number 20.
Yeah. Sorry, Dante, but you're gonna get this batch if you want.
That was the funnest sentence so far. But 19 first. So aflo f eininan m f hob and cheeks. So he stopped bringing to us his handiwork.
Yes. Yeah, and in this case, the metaphor is to leave something. So in Egyptian, an activity is a place where you remain or a place that you leave. Yeah, so that's actually a really good comparison that they're in these 2 sentences. I didn't notice that. That's awesome. Yeah, if you remain doing something, you keep doing it, and if you leave off doing something, you stop doing it. Okay, cool.
Should I read the whole thing or just sort of read it a phrase at a time and then translate, or what?
What do you think I'm going to say, Dante? How do you think I'm going to answer that?
You want me to read the whole thing?
Read it. Let's just do it.
Okay. Jesus te evchokivol pneuma. Yeah, I'm not used to seeing that unabbreviated. It's in the book, it's always printed abbreviated.
I probably wrote it like that.
Efu aav, avkotefevol Piordanes,
Yep.
F moushe pepnuma hi teremos en hach en hou, epirase emof hitem diabolos, aio empef laau en nehou et emau, en terushok de evol af heko. Okay, so, and Jesus. Now, chokavol in the glossaries, one of its meanings is to be perfected, which I think fits better than like finished in the Holy Spirit. So Jesus being perfected in the Holy Spirit, right? Having returned from the Jordan River, was walking in the Spirit in the desert or the wilderness for many days.
Yeah, great.
Now this it's got to be like a passive construction, because it doesn't make sense to say that they tempted him through the devil. So it must be like he was tempted by the devil. I mean, is that how you sort of hetem gets converted to by the devil? Okay.
Well, it's really, so hetem is upon the hand of. He tolos, or tore, he tore em diabolos. And then it, like, I don't want to be too much of a stick in the mud about this, but it really just means hetem. But evol heten or heten or whatever, they are used as the way of identifying the agent of a passive verb. So the word we use for that in English is by, but heten doesn't mean by. Heten means heten.
Right, like you were saying, Okay.
But you did a good job with that. That was great.
And he did not eat anything for in those days.
Yep.
And then when they finished, which I guess is the days, when those days were finished, then he got hungry.
Yeah.
It's a little weird, but I guess that's what it's trying to say, right?
That's definitely right. Yeah, it's interujok evol is the days when they finished. So when the many days of his fast were over,
then he was hungered. Yeah. Okay. I moos aishai en shomte en uno nu. I sat writing for 3 hours.
Yeah, good.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I hope it's not as long as it took y'all to do these exercises, but yeah. Almost as long as it takes to read number 20. That was quite a sentence. But you did great with it, Dante, and I'm grateful to you for sticking through all of that. So we have 4 more for David. Yeah, it's a good sentence.
Aumu evol eurime en teushe teres. They died. I think.
Typo.
Oh, is it a typo? What should it say?
Aumun, I think.
Oh, okay. That makes much more. I was like, man, this is dark. This is the darkest Lambda sentence so far. Okay.
So then it's they were filled. Where am I confusing?
I think of mu.
Yeah. Okay.
Munevol is to remain, and again, in Egyptian, you remain doing a thing.
So they sort of continued or crying
Yeah.
every day.
So Taushe means in the night.
Oh, it's night. I confused day and night.
Yeah, that's okay. So yeah, they
so
kept crying all night.
Maybe all night. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
every
glad they
is
weren't.
nim, right? When you say every, you use nim.
Yeah. Yeah, nim is kind of like any or every. It's like it could mean selecting all of the items in a set, or selecting an arbitrary. So you have to have the axiom of choice in Egyptian language. I think that's kind of fun. Any math nerds can enjoy thinking about that. And teres is more like entire. It's like the whole thing. So it's a thing that could be split up into parts, but isn't in this case being split up into parts. So the night, the entire night. Okay.
En pensó en shlel interesote menai. So we didn't continue. Shlel, was this to pray, or yeah? So we didn't continue praying when we heard these things, these words. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we didn't keep praying when we heard these words. So I don't know what those words were, but they caused a crisis of faith, evidently.
Yeah, and teunu aswo eschone awo asujai. So at this yeah, now or something, this is some idiomatic thing. Aswo.
Yeah.
Not sure what it means.
I think we saw it in the last chapter. Aswo eschone.
She. So something, she was sick, or she.
Yeah, so we have the
sick.
circumstantial here, and woe is to like. Gosh, I don't actually know what that verb means. She stopped being sick.
She stopped being sick. Okay, so then she stopped being sick and she became healthy, not sick.
Or woe is like finish. That's it. It's finish. So
Okay.
she finished being sick. But in this case, the meaning is like she stopped being sick. She wasn't sick anymore. Yeah, finish is probably the right translation here. I think that makes it work as like idiomatically. She in the hour, which means like, you know, at that moment, she stopped being sick. She finished being sick. She finished being sick. Yeah. Okay.
Allo IT and Henoik now. I seized, I stopped and I gave them bread.
Yeah. Yeah, I stopped, well, low. Yeah, I stopped and I gave bread to them. That's good. Do you have one more? Did you do? Oh my gosh, it worked out. It worked out perfectly. I don't know how I did that. I probably cheated someone a question. So I'm sorry about that. Joe, do you want to take the last four? I think we might have lost Joe. Let me see if he's here. Oh no, internet problems. Okay, Pat, do you want to take the last four?
No, I'll have to skip these.
Okay, Mustafa.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Afşarca enemau FPTMA now, he said with them who he rebuke, actually, yeah. Rebuke To see? I don't understand.
Oh no, it could be. So now is the verb that means see, but it can also be now as in to them,
Yeah, okay.
like nai,
Rebuke
nak,
them.
nas.
Who is rebuked to them?
Yeah.
Who
So
are rebuked them?
and it's him still. So he spoke with them, rebuking them.
Okay. He speak with them, rebuking them. Okay. Men ojai, shopan nete, necessotem, and anensa nefen tole. There is no well-being.
Yeah. In this case, it probably means salvation.
There is no salvation. That there is no salvation that and sesotem as actually it's a circumstantial and sesotem
No, it's not circumstantial. If you had sesotem, yeah, and it looks like the conjunctive, the ensa, but it's actually ensa sotem on, so it's just negative. So they don't obey.
They don't listen. They don't obey his commandments.
Yeah. So there is no salvation, sho'op, like extant, en neta ensa sotem on ensa nefen tole. So for those who they do not listen after his commandments. So there's no salvation for those who do not obey his commandments. It's kind of a complicated sentence. And then like I got ujai as salvation just from reading through the whole sentence and realizing that it, it doesn't mean like being healthy in this case, because it like people who don't obey God's commandments can still be perfectly healthy. So that can't be it. It's got to be like in a religious sense, the ujai in the sense of like salvation from death as a result of sin. So that yeah.
Akherator awakherato hachtem epef stavros eurime they have stand at the mouth, actually hachtem near,
just near,
near his cross to they cry.
Yeah. So they stood, it's past tense because we have this ow, right? It's the predator. Yeah. So they stood near his cross crying.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Afepitma now fjo emosje emperishaje and lau and rome et be pehop. Afepitma he rebuked, he criticized them, and he says it, and actually Jeb, it's a quotation here. Imperishaje, imperative, a negative imperative. Don't say any man about this work.
Yeah, good. Yeah, don't speak to any man about this work. Yeah. Good. Okay. Any questions about the exercises before we go to the chapter? Okay, last chance. So the chapter is actually just about one thing. It is about, and bipartite. So it's mainly about this, the second present. And he doesn't give you the forms because, as he says, it has the same forms as the circumstantial. So formally, the second present is indistinguishable from the circumstantial. They're exactly the same. But they have a different meaning, right? So we've seen the second preterite already, and that's the one that's like, I did do it for you instead of I did it for you, something like that. And then Lambden gives us the same guidelines for translating this with the cleft sentence construction. So erenai sho'ope moi et ben non nove. So these things happened for me because of my sins, but then there's this ere on the front of the verbal clause here that makes it a second tense. And then one way to translate the second tense is just to emphasize the adverbial component. And then he does this in the translation by moving it to the front of the sentence and creating a cleft sentence. So it is because of my sins at ben nanove that these things happen to me at a naisha open moi. And this is pretty good because the second tense does produce this kind of nominal clause from a verbal clause. So at a naisha open moi is that these things happened because of my sins. So yeah, we've seen second tenses before. The thing that makes these especially difficult is that they're indistinguishable from the circumstantial, and they're quite common. So you really have to use context to know. I'll tell you that these can, should, will trip you up for some time until you get used to them. And even, you know, I've read Coptic for a long time, but when we're reading things in like our reading group and stuff, there are definitely some sentences where I kind of go back and forth on like, is this a circumstantial or is it a second tense? Especially if you don't have like, you know, Coptic manuscripts generally don't have a lot of punctuation or word divisions or things. So it's sometimes it can be pretty ambiguous, but you just, you know, use your best judgment. So ekshina and sanim, that could mean asking after whom, or who are you asking after? Whom do you seek? Efrime eu, because of what are you crying? What are you crying about? And F-tone, where is he? So again, this just looks like the circumstantial, but then because it's, you know, this interrogative adverb, you get that it's the second tense instead. F-tone pekyot, where is your father? So this one is in here just to kind of show you how this is normally constructed. This is a really common way for this to be constructed in Coptic. We've seen plenty of cases like this where you have some kind of pronoun and then it's just repeated with a noun immediately adjacent to it or later in the sentence. And that's, yeah, here's an example of that. F-tone pekyot could also be ere pekyot tone, although this is less common. And just in general, Coptic really likes to use pronouns instead of just using nouns in the place because of the way Coptic is constructed. It's agglutinating and it just attaches all of these different morphemes together. When you stick a whole noun clause in between all of those little morphemes that attach together, it can easily get lost and create confusion. So Coptic really likes to use a pronoun and then just put the noun in after. I don't dwell in this place. Yeah. Intai asnak on. I didn't do it for you. So yeah, however you want to translate this. This is actually the second tense that we've already seen before, which looks like the past relative. Sorry. Yeah, you just get from context that that's what it is. And there's a lengthy part here. I think it's fairly lengthy. Yeah, it is pretty lengthy about the bipartite. One of the key things to spot here is Yarnsted's rule, which says that you can't use the direct connection of the direct object in the bipartite. So that's a very general rule. It's not always followed. He gives you some exceptions right away. Yeah, it's one of these rules that kind of only matters if you're trying to write something in Coptic. It won't matter for reading Coptic because there are two ways to say these sentences. So tiwoshemof, I want it, or tiwashef, I want it. You could translate either one of those fine based on what you know now, and you might not notice that like this is a violation of the Stern-Yarnstedt rule, but it is for this one verb, wecha or wosh in Coptic. there's an article by my teacher, Leo DePoit, about why this particular verb is allowed to violate the rule so freely. Like all rules in languages, this is kind of a general propensity. It's not absolutely set in stone, and you will find violations of it in real Coptic texts, but it's a general trend. So the bipartite doesn't use the direct connection of the direct object. You would expect to see M-mof in the bipartite and not F, right? In the tripartite is where you get the those suffix pronouns attaching directly to the infinitive. I don't know why that is true. It doesn't really make any sense to me. Yeah, I don't think I've ever fully understood that. Maybe I need to think about it a little bit more, but that's the rule. So you can learn about it. And then there's a little part here at the end about numbers. The key thing to notice is that, for example, 14 is mentafte. 20 is jotafte. So that afte ending is 4 when it's followed by some kind of tens place value. So the word for 4 is fto, just by itself, but then it becomes afte if it's in a compound like mentafte 14. And you can see that in a bunch of these cases. 5 is normally diu, but it's mente, so it becomes te when it's in a compound. 6 is so, but it becomes se. So instead of saying something like ment so, which isn't said, you say mentase. And you can see that what's kind of happening here, like the position of the stress is different in these compounds. So it changes the way the final number is pronounced. Pretty typical for Coptic. Probably not that confusing, but worth taking note of. And then in the exercises, I think, no, it's not loading. I think in the exercises, we get a whole bunch of examples of second tenses and circumstantials. So you kind of have to pay attention to which one is which. So yeah, that's what's in here. There's more details about this. I recommend reading all of this part. These terms, the bipartite and tripartite, are pretty important for talking about Coptic grammar. Not terribly important for reading Coptic, but if you wanted to like produce Coptic, you'll need to understand that. So I'm going to stop there. I know we're a little bit over time. 60 sentences is always a bit dodgy. I tried not to ramble too much, you know. I mean, you guys know me at this point. I got to ramble a little bit or I'd probably explode. So yeah, any questions about this chapter?
Something funny about the numbers. We had a discussion the other day on decall. Basically, he's missing the number 19.
Oh, wait, let me see. Is he?
He doesn't do 19 for whatever reason. And 19 is interesting because 19 has apparently, if I got it right from Alan, has a feminine and has a female and a male form. So I'm saying that because if you look at, for example, Shomte or Afte, you would think, oh, they look like females. They have an E at the end. So it's like the feminine form has been generalized for everything. But 19, if I have it right, actually still has the mensit and the mensite. So you can choose which one you want. So I find it peculiar. Maybe for symmetry reasons, he left it out. Doesn't make 2 nice columns that look the same way.
Maybe. It is odd. I didn't even notice, but yeah, that is strange that he left out number 19. I mean, it doesn't really, this rule of changing the word doesn't apply to it. I suspect that's why he left it off, actually. Yeah, because all of these, although Sashef or Sashfed, that's actually the same too. So he could have left off 17 and 13 by my logic. Yeah, I don't know why he left out 19. I guess the 2 columns looked nice and he didn't want to just, you know, stick it in there.
Stuff happens. But so I just want to point it out because we had the discussion like a few days back on the server by coincidence. What is the correct form for 19 since he doesn't give it?
Mentsis or mentsite, I think is how it's said. I don't think the 9 changes. Yeah, it sounds right to me anyway.
Yeah, that's what we landed on too.
Good question. I didn't see that in the server. I normally try to go read through everything that people put in the server and at least like, you know, read through it once and weigh in if necessary or if I can say something useful. But I missed that discussion. So sorry
that was
about
decall. That wasn't Saidic. That was decall. The deeper cave of linguistics. The
yeah, I tend to be less diligent about reading through those. So yeah, that explains why I missed it. Okay, in our server for this class, I definitely try to read through every conversation see if I can be helpful in some way. But you guys do a really good job of like helping each other out in there, which is awesome. Anyway, okay, any other questions about this chapter? I'm probably going to jump off pretty quick because we have to go do Alan's Coptic dialects, which is starting in 10 seconds or so. So hopefully I'll see y'all there. Okay, bye everyone.